Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, One Click to Credibility, Leveraging Open Access to Combat Misinformation, which is sponsored by CloudSource from Cersei Dynex. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. I'll just put a couple links in the chat where you can register for upcoming webinars and watch previous webinar recordings. Before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of our webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to submit any questions or comments for our speakers. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. You can also use the upvote feature to highlight questions you like or would like to be addressed. Also, there's closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom panel of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program, and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version and where to access today's slides. And with that, we're ready to get started, so I will hand it over to Mariska.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. And thank you all for taking valuable time out of your day to join us for this webinar, One Click to Credibility, Leveraging Open Access to Combat Misinformation. I'm Mariska Connolly. I'm the CloudSource Director of Partnerships and Communications here at Cersei Dynex. And that means that I work a lot with our content partners and with libraries. I'm a former academic librarian and have worked in systems, e-resources, and some instruction for both academic and medical libraries. And later in this presentation, you'll hear from Rick Brandham. He's the VP for Academic and Content Solutions and arguably the driving force behind our OA discovery efforts. So let me go ahead and dive in. So let me set the scene. Mis and disinformation enter stage right. Misinformation is a spectrum. Sometimes a single source can contain multiple elements that fall somewhere along this spectrum from relatively harmless, such as satire, that provide entertainment and social commentary. This includes things like The Onion and The Borowitz Report and The Daily Show. And while these are often politically biased and comment on current or historical events, they don't pretend to be a factual source. False connections get a little bit more questionable. They can include things like headlines, titles, or summaries that are intended to anger or upset people and draw them into clicking on links that have little or nothing to do with the incendiary preview. These are often known as clickbait. Misleading content is next on this spectrum. This is when a situation is reframed or framed in a way as to lead the reader to a specific conclusion or encourage them to feel a certain way by presenting the facts through a biased lens. False content can be included in any of these. There's very often examples of multiple points on the misinformation spectrum being included. But false content can be included in any of them. It often refers to things that are true, such as a quote or a photograph, but it's paired with a news article or a blog that has nothing to do with the content, the context of the quote or the event where the photo took place. Imposter content is information or news articles that are directly attributed to someone who didn't write them or hint that the information was created by somebody who wasn't involved. This idea, of course, is to lend a sense of legitimacy and credibility. A very common combination of imposter content and false content is medical claims made by medical professionals or doctors who aren't in the field they're claiming authority in, such as a dentist promoting a weight loss drug, but leaving out that his area of medical expertise isn't related to the product he is pushing. Manipulated content, especially AI images, have become more and more prevalent, and they're hard to spot and getting harder. There were actually a lot of AI images shared during the hurricane cleanup and rescue efforts after Helene, and it was honestly really disheartening how often people fell for them. On this end of the misinformation spectrum, those kinds of things almost always have an agenda to push, even if it's just to get more clicks and more engagement to generate ad revenue by emotionally manipulating people. Fabricated content is at the end of the spectrum, and that's where even a generous person can't attribute the intent to ignorance or greed. Fabricated content is created deliberately to cause harm or deceive people. And if you're wondering, these are absolutely representative of my facial expressions anytime I run into any of these types of mis or disinformation in the wild. But why are we talking about the types of misinformation? Well, our patrons and our students and our faculty members, they're seeing this everywhere. This is data from an Engelman Trust Barometer Global Report, and this survey was in 2022, late 2022, in the United States, and it revealed that the most popular news source among millennials was social media, with 45% of respondents reporting daily news consumption on social media and 32% getting their daily news from streaming services. I want to point out that newspapers, local and national newspapers, fall all the way at the bottom of this chart. And in late 2023, 62% of adults reported to another global survey saying that they trusted traditional media, whereas 68% said they trusted search engines. The same study also determined that social media was the least trusted source among American adults, which suggests that even though a large amount of them report using social media to get their news, they would be open to more reliable sources of information. And we can't ignore TikTok in the mix. A Pew Research study in 2023 found that more and more Americans are getting their news from this particular social media source. Among adults aged 18 to 29, they're most likely to say they regularly get news from TikTok. About a third of Americans in this particular age group, at about 32%, say they regularly get news from there, which is a higher share than years before. And more of TikTok's US adult user base, so everyone over 18, are getting their news from there as well. So currently 43% of all TikTok users say they regularly get news on the site, which is up from 33% the previous year. And that's, a huge 10% jump there. So what happens when people get their information from social media and search engines? Well, the quality is questionable. Thinking back to that mis and disinformation spectrum, we often see people doubling down on misinformation through no fault of their own because they're seeing this information come up frequently and don't know how to fact check it properly. And then there's ChatGPT to consider, which has rapidly gained traction as both a tool to create and summarize content, but also as a search tool. So earlier this year, Semrush, which is a platform that analyzes keyword searching, analytics and SEO, which is search engine optimization, released an analysis of more than 80 million lines of global clickstream data from just the second half of 2024. I think it was October to the end of the year, to identify how people interacted with ChatGPT. Now, they do market research, so their purpose was to demonstrate to customers that Search GPT was exposing smaller websites in search results, but the data revealed some really interesting things about user search behavior. To give you an idea of the scope, Google reaches 6.5 million unique worldwide users just in December of 2024, while ChatGPT drew 566 million visitors in that same month. So Google is still the dominant place people look for information, but ChatGPT is gaining ground. In this clickstream data, they looked at 52% of search intent on ChatGPT was informational, 52%. And their analysis defines information as being informational as being learning about topics, quote unquote, or what we call in the library world, conducting research. So when looking at the users of Google and ChatGPT, we see some patterns emerging in demographics as well, and this should not surprise any of you. ChatGPT, its user base is younger, 47% or 264 million users are between 18 and 24, and they tend to lean male. You can see the purple bars here represent people searching Google for information, and the green bars represent ChatGPT. So although not Although it doesn't show on this particular graphic, ChatGPT's audience skews more towards students compared to Google. So 21% of ChatGPT are students and about 9% of Google users. I suspect I'd find some favorability towards ChatGPT for research purposes, just because the 20 somethings in my life, which include my children, often pull it up when they want to ask a question or gather information. But these click through numbers were really eye opening. So what could possibly go wrong? That's a big question. Well, I decided to be a bit cheeky and ask ChatGPT's search to sum up the risks for me. Hallucinations, misinformation, bias, discrimination, privacy issues, copyright issues. These are all well documented in the literature, but a search in ChatGPT or other AI platforms will rarely warn you of these things unless you're asking it directly, like I did. Though recently I will give Google AI credit because their answers at the top of search results have started to give a little tiny warning at the bottom that says AI responses may include mistakes. It's really small letters, but still easy to miss. All right. The first time I ever heard, and this will be relevant, I promise, the term filter bubble was in a 2013 TED Talk by Eli Parsner. He's a technology and social issues researcher who'd been looking at this topic for many years, but he's not the only one looking at it. Scholars from librarianship to communications to computer science have looked at this phenomenon. When Parsner said there is no standard Google anymore, what he meant is that our behaviors on the internet, um, what we interact with, what we like, what we even spend time looking at, our screen time, can and do influence what the algorithms feed us more frequently. If you've ever dropped into incognito mode or used a public computer, you might have noticed this. Everyone gets search results tailored to their perceived interests. Even the word choices you make influence what comes back as results and what many people still ingest as fact. So if you search climate change hoax rather than climate change, you're going to get a vastly different set of results. Librarians know this, but our patrons often don't. It's the reason our profession uses controlled vocabulary like Library of Congress terms or mesh headings. Um, as many wonderful things as AI is capable of, and I'm a huge Google Lens user myself, we do need to be mindful of where and when it's creeping up. AI answers now appear at the top of every Google search for the most part. The idea is to anticipate the answers you're looking for and to offer AI generated responses before the website links, which are about halfway down the page at this point. If that's where your patrons are stopping, then they might be getting wrong or misleading information. AI might be getting smarter, but understanding current events, politics, medical issues, climate change, and a lot of important issues often require more than a shallow surface level answer. Additionally, AI can't distinguish yet between serious answers and satire or joking, leading to some really interesting answers when it pulls from places like Reddit. Libraries can offer that nuanced answer. So I checked my news feed. I guess it was 2 Fridays ago now, last Friday maybe, and was presented with a perfect example of how pervasive and damaging misinformation and disinformation can be. On May 22nd, the Make America Healthy Again Commission under Robert F. Kennedy Jr. released its new report on chronic childhood disease and health issues in children. It covered topics like diet, vaccine schedules, social media usage. The report was created in a little over 3 months, which is pretty fast for a meta analysis like that. It's almost 80 pages long. It contains 522 references to studies, government reports, and news articles. The problem is that some of those studies either don't exist or they're incorrect. For example, Catherine Keyes, an epidemiology professor at the Columbia University Mailman School of Public Health, was cited in the report as the author of Changes in Mental Health and Substance Use Among U.S. Adolescents During the COVID-19 Pandemic, which the report said was published in the medical journal JAMA Pediatrics. However, Keyes and the named co-authors didn't actually write that paper. In addition to a lot of citation errors, 7 of the studies cited didn't exist at all. They were completely made up. There's been some speculation, unsurprisingly, that AI was used to generate some of this content, but I haven't seen that confirmed yet, so I'm not going to point any fingers. But the point is, if this isn't a case for libraries and quality research, I don't know what is. if the Department of Health and Human Services has trouble identifying real research from false, how much more challenging is it for the average student or library patron? So let me interrupt my talking to do a quick poll with you. So, what services does your library provide to combat misinformation or promote media literacy on a general scale? And you can pick as many of these as apply. Formal training of some type, online resources like a LibGuide or a web page, on the spot triage. So, if somebody comes up to the reference desk or you're working one on one with a student, workshops or one shot educational opportunities, something else that I didn't think of here, or maybe it's not something you have the staff or the time to really focus on right now, even if you might like to. I'm going to give this I guess about 30 seconds total, and we'll see what we get up here. I have a feeling most of the libraries are doing multiple things. I know we did what we could at libraries I've worked at. Yeah, formal classes or training, love that. Online resources, I think, is a really common one because it doesn't require a whole lot of staffing and you can keep it current really easily. Ad hoc or triage, yep, and workshops and one-off presentations. Great. Thank you for that. Right, so here's the thing. Patrons can and do use the library for answering critical questions and finding information, which is the good news in all of this. And I looked at a few different studies and just kind of gauging patron trust. So let's look at the first one, which is how the community views libraries in general through the lens of a couple of recent surveys. So, November of 2023, Every Library Institute and Book Riot surveyed, in this case, parents across the country about their perceptions of public and school libraries. A lot of this still applies to higher education. And this was in response to the calls for book bans and censorship issues, which are kind of leaking across the whole library world. There were a few findings here that are worth pointing out. 92% of respondents trust librarians to know what books to recommend to younger patrons for their age group. 78% agree that librarians support lifelong learning, so well beyond childhood. 75% think that librarians are experts at connecting patrons to what they need. And when asked to rank a list of professions by how trustworthy or untrustworthy that they perceive them to be, both school and public librarians were trusted more than police, social workers, dentists, vets, religious leaders, and public librarians were more trusted than doctors. So you can imagine academic librarians, are at least, if not more trusted than that, considering their expertise. So despite the vocal minority calling for book bans and censorships, most people do trust their librarians to know what they're doing and to have their best interests at heart. And a Pew Research subject from survey rather from 2017, which I would love to see the survey updated, exposes patron views of libraries' trustworthiness by generation. And surprise, 78% of all US adults say they can find trustworthy and reliable information at their library. The percentage of millennials, who I guess are between about 30 and 45 now, is even higher at 87%. And this trend follows through when it comes to learning new things and getting information to help them make decisions or to write papers. Some other things that respondents thought: 65% say that libraries help them grow as people. 49% think libraries help them focus on things that matter in their life. 43% believe libraries help them cope with a busy world. 38% say libraries help them cope with a world where it's hard to get ahead. And 27% think libraries have helped them protect their personal data from online thieves. So, in overall, libraries are trusted. So great. Patrons aren't always doing a great job of finding information on their own. They're getting caught in filter bubbles. They're having trouble judging misinformation from truth. They are looking on social media for their news and their information, but they trust librarians. Unfortunately, quality resources are getting more expensive every day. EBSCO recently released their 2025 Serials Price Projection Report, which is always a mouthful. And unsurprisingly, to any e-resources or collections librarian, and probably most directors, I think too, the cost of these critical resources just keep increasing. EBSCO reports that in 2024, e-journal packages were over 60% of their total sales. As academics and special libraries often have to meet accreditation requirements and fulfill research needs, these journal packages are an unavoidable part of budget considerations. They often need the latest research in order to support the needs of their users, and that often comes with a high price tag. In 2025, you can expect journal packages to go up by 3.5 to 4% and individual titles by 4 to 5%. And you're not going to save anything going to print, even if you're lucky enough to have the space in your stacks to house it. To their credit, EBSCO is really transparent about this information, but it doesn't really help libraries who are often facing shrinking budgets and decreased grants and decreased enrollment. And maybe that doesn't sound like much of an uplift, but let's step back and look at a longer time frame. Again, this data comes directly from EBSCO. While a single digit increase doesn't seem like much, over 5 years, we're talking more than 3% increase for colleges and universities, more than 14 for academic medical libraries, and nearly 12% for law schools. That adds up quickly, but the remedy might honestly surprise you. Patrons trust libraries to provide reliable information, but e-resources are expensive. Open access can actually provide a reputable, cost-effective answer and can be a really great foundation for your collection. And that is if we can make it discoverable, because that's always the hard part. So let me back up a moment and give you a picture of what the open access landscape looks like in 2025. There's a lot of open access out there. Over 65 million scholarly resources are open access articles, books, and data sets. Over 51 million of these are just scholarly articles, and we're pretty picky about what we call scholarly on our end. This is things that are indexed in Crossref, and you can find them in Scopus. 61% of all scholarly articles published since 2017, so the last 8 years, are open access. That's 61% of them. 3.8 million open articles were published in 2023 alone. Making that about 67% of the scholarly articles published that year freely available. This chart here, you know what, I'll talk about it in a moment. So as exciting as 65 million OA resources are, there's a flaw in this system. It's often hard to find it. If we look at just scholarly journal articles, setting aside data sets and books and OER and those non-scholarly materials, you've got about 51 million articles spread across hundreds of thousands of publications. Many libraries turn on the Directory of Open Access Journals, the DOAJ, in their discovery layer, or they add it to their A to Z list, and they think they have OA covered. I did it myself as a librarian. But what they actually have is about 16%, since the DOAJ indexes only got gold and diamond journals, so those fully open ones. That leaves about 84% of all scholarly content, out in the cold. This graph here on the right, it's from a PeerJ research article from 2017, and it shows an anticipated shift in scholarly communications by about 2040, where about 100% of peer-reviewed articles are expected to adopt open access licensing of some type. The primary driver behind this trend lies with funder mandates. So, granting agencies are requiring OA publication models. This includes the National Institutes of Health, NIH, all federal government agencies that support research, the European Commission, government agencies around the world, and also private organizations like the Gates Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, Microsoft Research. They've all similarly committed to the OA cause. So researchers seeking their support are obligated to publish their findings under an OA license. And it reinforces this collective commitment to unrestricted access to scholarly output, which of course increases the chance that somebody's going to cite your work and continue your research. So it's beneficial across the field. All of these factors are shaping the future of research content on the global scale. And what we see when we look at the top ranked journals is that they have very high OA publication rates. These are the top 20 multidisciplinary journals that, as of earlier this year, January, I believe, ranked by Cimego, and more than a good chunk of them are more than half OA already. Many are just approaching or have already become fully open access. This first one here, this number one ranked cancer research journal, as a librarian, I might be a little salty if I was paying, full price for 3% because it is 97% OA at this point. And we see this discipline by discipline. The higher the rank of the journal in that discipline, the more likely it is to have a high OA open access publication rate. I know this number's gone up since then, but just earlier this year, we ran the count again, 178,000 journals publishing OA content right now, the majority of them being hybrid. The largest publishers of open access content are the same publishers that have historically published the bulk of scholarly articles. They have high editorial standards and they're not lowering them for OA. Those peer review standards are the same. These journals publishers will always want to publish the best authors and the most interesting research, which coincidentally are the people getting grant funding. Most of them are not pure OA journals. They're what we call hybrid. The publishers have basically made room for OA articles in their traditional subscription products. They reside right next to articles that require access through a paid subscription, which means from a functional perspective, you almost need a subscription to access all of it. 80% of open access content, or 84% rather, exist in hybrid journals and other colors of OA, and it's the highest quality available content. CloudSource OA actually includes all of this OA content, that from the purely open access journals indexed in DOAJ and from hybrid journals from all these publishers with one click and no authentication. So just to quickly review these challenges in open access, navigating through various platforms to discover open access resources is challenging. You've got 178,000 journals publishing. If you sent your patrons individually to them to look for open access content, it would be a nightmare. And most of them don't even filter for OA. OA data is unorganized, it's scattered across the publishing landscape. And discovery, even when you can bring some of this or subscribe to these databases and it's in your platform, your discovery platform, they're often proprietary and biased towards the subscriptions you're paying for. Because obviously, if an article is available in open access and paid and available under a paid subscription, your vendors want to see that usage be high, so they're going to give you that paid subscription link first, which is understandable. It's a business. But even if you can find all this OA, how can the general public access this freely available information without a paid subscription clearance? Libraries exist to level the information playing field, which CloudSource fully supports. There's no authentication required, and it only takes one click to view full text OA articles, because if there's an OA copy, we're going to give you that first. The idea is that it removes the barriers to access, which means even your alumni can, use this resource and be able to get access to really good information. CloudSource is working to eliminate information deserts. And I know we talked about this kind of at length here, but open access articles are peer reviewed and they're high quality, and it's more than just that 16% in the DOAJ. Although OA started with the STEM fields, it does include access to all subject areas at this point. It's important to note that we've been seeing a lot of growth with social sciences and humanities. The open access movement has gained momentum in recent years, and more researchers, institutions, and funders are recognizing the benefits of making their work freely available to the public. And because I love to dig into data, this is the top 25 fields of study that exist in the CloudSource Index right now. And I pulled the ones just since 2017 because it shows some interesting changes. Art appears in the top 25 subject areas. Law appears for the first time in the last 8 years. Humanities does, business does. Geology and surgery used to occupy the top 25 and they've disappeared entirely. What we see is that over the last decade or so, the subject areas in the global body of open access articles has started to make this shift towards equilibrium between STEM and other major academic disciplines. All right, let's see if everyone's awake. If I put you to sleep yet. Let's take a quick look at what challenges are you currently facing when making OA discoverable, because I would be surprised if a lot of you didn't already know how much open access is out there. Do you have no central discovery? Is discovery doesn't include much or any OA resources? Are you educating staff? Are you working with patrons to educate them to where to look for OA? Do you have concerns about quality? Other access challenges? What kinds of things are in the way of you using more open access at this point? And again, I'll give this about 20 more seconds to see what we get. I know that I expect that it not being in central discovery or having discovery that doesn't really include a lot of OA is going to be pretty high on the list, but I used to really try and get my faculty to use open access textbooks, and educating them on the fact that a lot of these were really quality resources was a really big challenge for me. So, and there it is, educating staff and patrons. Yeah, concerns with quality. This is actually like more balanced across this set of answers than I expected it to be. But educating patrons for sure takes the lead. All right. Let's I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Rick Brandham to go ahead and show you a little bit of what CloudSource can do to kind of help address this misinformation and pandemic we're having right now.
Great. Great job as usual. And I am sharing the wrong screen, so hang on a second here.
We've all been there.
Yeah, it's I grabbed the wrong screen share. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing my slide, Mariska.
I am indeed.
All right. So I've been following the questions in the Q&A, and we will have time to answer those at the end. But I want to follow up on Mariska's good information and talk about how CloudSource can help. So CloudSource is Cersei Dynix's new content platform. It's part of our library services platform called Blue Cloud, and it offers comprehensive aggregation, enrichment, management, and discovery of e-resources of all library types. So CloudSource can be delivered in a couple of different ways. First is just access to all of the OA and OER data. As Mariska mentioned, there are now more than 65 million open access resources, and that includes articles, proceedings, reports, data sets, etc. It also includes open ebooks and e-textbooks from vetted quality partners, which I'm going to touch on in a moment. And it also includes open educational resources, and these can be courses, lesson plans, videos, worksheets, activities, things like that. So another option for CloudSource is CloudSource Plus, and that expands on that open access and OER index to include subscription content, options for on-demand fulfillment from our partners, Copyright Clearance Center's Get It Now, and Article Galaxy from Research Solutions. And it adds about 1 billion records to the index that include non-OA scholarly content, popular magazines, trade journals, non-OA books, textbooks, multimedia formats, and news sources. So we're not just aggregating all of this content. We've built a platform of tools that enrich the metadata using multiple vetted partners. We're adding all the information you see here, and that's going to be apparent in the small demo I'm about to give you. So let's take a look and see the discovery interface for this open content. So again, it's more than 65 million resources that span about 178,000 journals, but also includes ebooks and e-textbooks and other OER in the same index. And I'll walk through some of these features as we go through the demo. So you can do a general keyword search or pick a specific field. I'm going to search for misinformation. Quite a few hits, 16,000 of them. There is a Wikipedia article that gives you a little more information on whatever you've typed in. And you've got numerous filters, but before we do that, I'm going to limit my results to bias, narrowed me down to about 500. And then I'm going to further limit to peer-reviewed articles only. And then further, you've got publication, date filters, and they're in chronological order to make it easy. And then formats, I've just got articles on this particular result set, fields of study, publication names, language of the article, the exact CC license, mesh headings where relevant, and the publisher filters. Let's take a look at a hit I was reviewing earlier. And this is from Scientific Reports. There's an abstract to give you a little more information on that. And very handily, we show you these resource statistics that give you a kind of a bird's eye view of some of the metrics on that article. One click takes you to full text, so your users do not have to be authenticated. And every result from CloudSource has that single click to full text. There are also additional links, so you can maybe find a prepub or some other version of the article. You can go to the publisher site, you can add the article to your list, you can permalink a result and save it or share it with someone. You can build a citation. Now, there are about 2,500 citation styles that you can pick from. You display the ones that are most helpful for your users. You can include style notes and a link to a style guide. Your users can annotate the citation before capturing it. They can also do some formatting if I want to add italics to that journal name and add a hyperlink to the DOI. I can do that and then capture it right into my clipboard or export it in RIS format to EndNote, Zotero, Mendeley, whatever the user might be using. And then there is a report link issue. If there's a problem with the particular link, you can self-report that, and that helps us report that back to the provider. Looking at the detail of this article, you can see that the data across the top are all things we've done to enrich the display and improve access and discovery. You can click on a particular referenced article or open them all in a separate tab with just a click. Likewise with cited by references, published with references. We also include buzz, which are reviews from multiple sites around the web. To look a little more at the books in OER in our index, we do include ebooks from credible partners like OAPN, DOAB. Occasionally we'll find a collection like that from MIT Press that we'll add if it's not already in OAPN or DOAB. We also aggregate open e-textbooks from Open Textbook Library, and they are also now including ebooks from other sources like OpenStax. And we also get a regular updated feed from OER Commons, and that's included as well. So I'm going to do a search on social media teenagers relevant to the topic at hand. And I'm going to limit my results to some of the book formats. And let's just include those. And then I've got a list of results. And again, because these are all open access, one click will take me to that full text. And then I can save that, share it, come back to it again and again without the challenges of authentication. And like articles, we are doing our best to expand the kind of data you see for this record, including reviews and citations, abstracts, etc. I'm going to do another search. Let's say I'm a student studying for calculus and I want some additional resources like perhaps textbooks. And I'm going to limit by textbooks, 124 of them for calculus. And I'm further going to limit by the course level, community college, college, upper division. And that brings me down to 118 textbooks on calculus. And again, there's a little description, and with the view, I can jump right to this OER Commons source and go right into the full text of that calculus textbook. And then one more example, I'm going to search for renewable resources, and browsing around, I found a really good lecture on renewable resources, and that lecture included a explainer video that was pretty nice. So let's click into that. This too comes from OER Commons, and that was a Cal Poly video with renewable resource information. Okay, Mariska, do you want to take the wheel again and wrap us up?
I sure will. All right. Thank you so much. So a few key takeaways. I believe I have the screen now before we get into the Q&A, and I'm really excited about some of those questions. We always get such good questions in this. So we covered a lot of territory today. I hope that you leave this with maybe a few things that you didn't know, or maybe just some reinforcement of why libraries are so important. patrons, students, staff, anyone who uses libraries from a variety of age groups and backgrounds, they're getting a significant portion of their news and information from sources such as TikTok, ChatGPT, Google. But they do trust their librarians to provide high quality and timely information. That hasn't changed. Databases and journals, they can be expensive, but OA can really help with this side of things. There are now more than 65 million resources, including scholarly articles, books, and OER, covering a range of subjects, a range of teaching levels, and disciplines, and available today. And it's growing daily. We are updating that index on pretty much a daily basis. CloudSource does make discovery of quality OER and OA resources a lot easier, including books and open educational resources. You don't have to struggle with trying to find OA online or hope you subscribe to a hybrid journal so that you can get the access to all that high quality OA that exists within them. You don't have to worry about DOAJ just giving you 16% of it. You can get the full global body of OA in one place. And again, one click and no authentication, which I can't stress enough because I know my alumni back when I was working at academic libraries would have absolutely been thrilled to be able to get all that content. Many libraries can make OA the core of their collection strategy and then use subscription journals and databases strategically based on users' research needs, on accreditation needs. And we didn't get a chance to talk about it today, but one thing we do offer that is really popular, and I think it's a great service, we offer a free collection analysis. And basically what we're doing with that is helping you determine how much of your current subscription content is available in CloudSource OA, and then on top of that, how much additional journal access you can get that you don't currently get through any of your subscriptions. So whether you find a lot of overlap or just a little bit, the information provided in this collection analysis report can be really helpful to make smart, educated collection development decisions as you go forward. All right, and because I love to hear from the audience, one more poll question. How important is OA and OER in your collection strategy right now? If you aren't a collection development or resources librarians or an admin, make your best guess just based on context clues. Does your library talk about OA? Is it prominent on the website or in the LibGuides? Have you heard discussion about cutting budgets and finding alternate resources? Does your campus promote open textbook initiatives? That's a huge one. Anything here that can kind of clue you into what your library and your institution feels about OA and how much they prioritize it right now. I was, as you can imagine, a huge proponent of it myself when I was a librarian. Very important, somewhat important. I'm really happy to hear that the majority of libraries really do prioritize this. I think it's impossible to ignore with how much is out there now. We include it when it's convenient. I get that completely. It's not easy to use. Absolutely understand that. Right. And I think at this point, let us move on to some Q&A. We have some exciting questions here, and I'm going to go ahead and throw up some resources while Rick and I are talking so that you can have plenty of time to look at those.
Yeah, thank you. And I saved most of these for the Answer Live session. So Craig had a nice comment on TikTok and how does younger people's reliance on TikTok for news compare to earlier generations' use of the most popular social platforms of the day? The thing that strikes me is that social media is free for users, and young adults are regularly the demographic with the least amount of disposable income. Any indication that folks come to rely on more paid media as they get older? Does the audience captured by social media carry one into later life? Any thoughts on that,
Yeah,
Mariska?
looking at it, just all the studies I've looked at, it's going to be hard to really know for a few more years yet how many of the millennials and the younger generations continue to make that a primary source as they move forward. Because, my generation, I didn't have a computer until I was in high school. I didn't have the internet till I graduated. So we're kind of still at that cusp where we're a lot of those people who grew up with social media, they're not old enough to know really what the trends are yet. So I'll be really fascinated to see what this looks like in, 25, 30 years if these trends continue. But that fact that, subscriptions to to journals, obviously, but even to, news sources are expensive. I understand why a lot of people go to social media. I mean, they're obviously the product in that case. They're the advertising dollars are what's paying for those things. But to them, it feels like a very accessible way to stay informed. And I think that's where a lot of the education for our patrons really needs to come in. It is I will say something radical. It's okay to learn about stuff through social media as long as you're verifying your facts. As long as if you read something, if you're going to your library and going, you know what, I read this, it sounded really inflammatory. I'm going to go to my college library and I'm going to, get the facts on this, or I'm going to go to my public library. It's okay to hear about things, just verify. But I'll be interested to see what happens because I think this trend, considering, I think it was 45% on that slide. That use social media for news, are millennials. And, I'm just on the cusp, the high end myself. We're all professional adults right now and we're still using it. So that makes me think in 20 years, we're still going to be using a lot of social media, at least to get that initial, this is what's important. This is what you need to look for. We just need to bridge that gap between what they're hearing online and where they're at when they're actually verifying the veracity of those claims. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, and to
Mhm.
your point, Craig, about
Mhm.
any indication that your use of social media carries through later in life. Mariska had a slide early on about TikTok usage, and it
Mhm.
was broken down by age demographics. And it does appear that the trend is that usage of TikTok is continuing as the users age. Uh,
Yeah, and I think it'll be more so too, considering, the people who were born digital natives are going to get up to those ages and be used to using it their whole lives. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Amy had a question. I'm wondering if there's any examination or study on the number of government reports, such as the Maha report, was riddled with non-existent citations that have been released. The US government used to be a reliable source of information, but I'm not certain that is true anymore. I think there should be an ongoing impartial study of that kind. Did you
Yeah, and I
cross that?
think there's,
Mm,
the person, the whistleblower for how much incorrect citations and information was in that was actually and I forget what the name of the organization is, but it's founded by the same people who founded Snopes. So I think as we're seeing more of this, I really, hope we can trust that most of this was well researched in the past, and it's becoming, especially with AI being such a convenient tool for generating information, um, as it's become more of a problem, we're starting to see some pretty grassroots responses to this from the librarians world, from information professionals that are kind of rising up and going and looking at some of these with a fine tooth comb when they come out, raising the alarm, and that prompts other people to look at it. But it's disheartening. We shouldn't have to do this, and I'm hoping this is not a long-term trend, but that particular report was, and I used to work on systematic reviews and meta-analyses, as a librarian myself, and you can't produce something that well researched in 3 months. I mean, just the time frame is already raised a little bit of orange flags. So yeah,
right.
yeah.
Great. Thank you for that. And thanks for that question, Amy.
Yeah, thank you, Amy.
Teresa says I often go back to Calvin Moore's 1959 paper, Moore's Law. I may not be saying that right. Moore's Law, or why
Mhm.
some retrieval systems are used and others are not. While it is more likely about information avoidance, I sense that it is much about just get it done. Don't worry about due diligence.
Hmm. Which is a sad thing. I don't know that there's necessarily a question in there, but I feel you.
Right.
And I need to reread that myself. Actually, it's been a while.
Thank you. And thank you, Calvin. And Victoria S. Said, I find Google to be unreliable as of late because every search has a built-in AI that is usually wrong or not answering what I needed. I hate that a search engine is forcing me to use AI when I don't need it.
Yeah,
I
I
think a lot
know.
of
And and
way.
if you're right, and it takes up half the page, half the first, results page at this point. And I will not call out this poor young person, but someone I know in my life actually recently got a new tattoo, and they were looking for the spelling of it. It was a psychology term, and they pulled the spelling out of the AI search results at the top, assuming it was correct, and now they have a misspelled tattoo. So it is, it's an easy trap to fall in. It looks like it's summarized this information beautifully. It refers back to some articles on the side, but it's riddled with misinformation and small, problems that make it very concerning. I wish people would just go to the second page at this point.
Agreed. Michelle said, OA is great, but how to balance increased access with copyright? And I just want to point out that, I don't know that there's an easy answer to that, but we're doing our best to make the exact copyright license very transparent. If you remember, we showed some statistics on every hit and on the detailed view that gives the exact CC license. And you can also filter on that if you want to only include certain CC licenses in your results. And then further, you can click through to a detailed description of what that CC license means. So there's some tools to help educate the researcher as well.
Yeah, I think that the transparency that we really tried to push as part of our product is we're showing you exactly where it comes from. We're showing you exactly what Creative Commons and open licenses apply to it. And that stuff can be really hard to find. So just having it all on that, quick result page is I think really powerful.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Roseanne just commented that she likes that you can edit the citation before capture.
Me
Thank
too.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's helpful to do all that work before dropping it right into your paper. And I didn't show it, but you can actually select all or multiple results and capture all those citations in batch if you want, which is another
Yeah,
nice.
what I like about that being able to edit the citation is, when you're working on your bibliographic or your references page while you're working through something, you're going to plug something in somewhere. You're going to have a chart, you're going to have a reference to something, and being able to immediately see which citation, as you're going through and putting your in-text citations where it came from, it speeds things up beautifully.
Indeed. Uh, Krista says, how is the OA content screened against fake journal content, formerly called predatory journals, but now fully AI generated OA articles? Um, one mechanism we're using, and there's no perfect solution, but we're vetting content against Crossref. Crossref, again, not a perfect mechanism, but they're doing a pretty good job of vetting um, real journals and weeding out fake and predatory journals from the get-go. So that is one of the tools we use to help weed out these non-peer-reviewed journals.
Yeah, and we do a lot of kind of hands-on work on our end too. We have absolutely removed things that we feel are questionable, and we put a lot of tools in the hands of our customers as well. So if there's something that you are not so sure about and you would like to remove, you can go down to the journal level, no problem, and just block something if you're not comfortable with it. But also let us know, please, because we'll investigate it. We want to keep everything as high quality as possible.
Indeed, and there is that link reporting where you can flag something there that you have questions about. But like Mariska said, our collection management tool for staff lets you go pull up a publication and just with one click remove it from the index. So, and that applies to every customer. So you get to curate what ultimately shows up in your search results.
Absolutely. And if you come to the weekly webinars that we do, our deep dives, we're more than happy to, show you some of that. Usually they're nice, small, intimate groups where we can, demo the full product and also show you some of the things that you're concerned about individually. Yeah. And you can register there at cloudsource.net actually, or with the QR code there, because I'm a fan of being able to just scan it with my phone.
Absolutely. And thanks to Scott and Nicole for pointing out that in your search string on Google, you can add -AI to
Yes.
the end of your search string to omit AI
Yeah.
generated text.
There's some great like super user tricks for searching in Google, but because I took a course on it when I was in college myself, but the problem is patrons don't know that. Like they don't know they can search just edu websites. They don't. That's actually a wonderful thing to educate patrons about. I definitely did a lot of that in one-on-one reference interviews. Did you know you can do this? But yeah, I'm glad to hear that it works for AI too.
That's a great tip. Thank y'all for that.
Yeah, I'm going to test it as soon as I get off this call.
That's right. And Sarah just said, ditch Google and use DuckDuckGo or Escocia. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree. No AI and shitification.
Yeah, for
But,
real.
uh,
Mhm.
all right. And then Leanne says the number of journals indexed in ERIC are now reduced by 45%. ProQuest and EBSCO are maintaining their portals, but both have a paywall. Will this
Yeah.
DOE initiative to pull scholarly journals from their index affect CloudSource OA search?
Yeah, so the long answer is we're playing whack-a-mole with a lot of this right now because of some of the changes that are happening with resources that are available. But we're really on top of it. And as soon as they announced that Eric was going to be coming down, we immediately checked against our index to verify that we had the vast majority of it, and identify things that we didn't, that we could acquire elsewhere. So we're definitely on top of that. We don't want to lose access to those resources. A lot of them are really fantastic. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of checking our news on a Monday morning and seeing what kind of crazy things happened and what do we need to look into right now. But that's time consuming for libraries to do. Like it's part of my job to keep track of that and make sure that we're verifying that we have some of this pulled material. But it is time consuming.
Yeah, and one thing to note is that we're not relying on Eric as a source. So we're not
No.
ingesting data from Eric. We're
Yeah.
going to the source, which is Crossref, is
Yep.
typically where it starts, and getting all of that scholarly journal content. Those that have OA licenses, we are including in our aggregation. We're not, like I said, pointing to Eric. So truly, what they've done at Eric doesn't affect what we've already aggregated as scholarly content and won't in the future.
Yeah, exactly. That's a fair point. And I know that some industrious person came up with the Erica project to try and archive a lot of that. And of course, we want current up to date links, so we're going to continue to go to the source for that information, rather than pulling anything that might be quickly outdated. But yeah, a lot of that's in Crossref, some of it's in government docs, which I know a lot of libraries are stopping being government repositories. So, that's another area we're pulling things in, but we are fortunately not relying on Eric.
Right. EBSCO said that their EDS comes loaded with most of the OA that CSOA indexes. Are you familiar with this claim?
Yeah,
Uh,
earlier this year that is something they started doing, but it is about half of what we have. And also, where we've got 65 million, I think most of them are running around 30 million at this point. And on top of that, even in their own documentation, they say they're going to give you a link to a paid resource first, which, it kind of goes against the way, we've decided to approach this as an OA forward product. So if you are going to the paid subscription resource, that bumps up your usage numbers, but you're also not getting a really realistic idea of how much of that content is open access that your patrons are using, because they're not going to give them that OA link. I don't even know if they let you pull usage for OA. Have you looked into that yet, Rick? Um,
I'm not sure on that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
fairly new development, so
As of I think February, it might
I
have been
think it
when they
was
started
March
making that
actually.
available. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what
Um,
it comes down to it is they have about half of what we do, and they're going to send you to your subscription resources first, for sure.
well, and it's worth noting that um, they're the bulk of their revenue is based
Hmm.
on subscription content. So they have a very vested interest in getting you to maintain your subscriptions and to continually click on a paid version rather than the OA full text. So there's just they have a mindset of protecting that revenue and downplaying OA as much as possible.
Yeah.
So we have just a last minute or so. Sarah asked about DuckDuckGo, or Summer said, "Is it true that DuckDuckGo won't track what you search?" I just did a quick search, and it looks like DuckDuckGo does not track your search history, but y'all may want to research on that on your own. Thanks for that comment. Rachel, we also included, when relevant, I work for an aeronautical university and see a lot of resources are from the FAA or DOT. So thank you. Joyce, Doctorow is calling this enchitification. Oh, okay, thank you. I should have read A few other comments, and I'm just seeing if there's anything else relevant for the last minute. Um, do you think AI will take over library jobs since everyone can find books online or even purchase books on Amazon?
Honestly, as many issues as we're seeing with AI, I don't think so. No, I
Right.
think there are people who think that. I don't think functionality wise it's going to actually happen. It does some things really, really well, and we use some AI tools, but it's very limited on what it can do, and you have to use it smartly. It's not going to take over librarians, I don't think.
Well, and I'll point back to your very apt slide that people still trust librarians above most other professional
100%. Yeah.
jobs. So
Humans trust humans. That's still true, and especially librarians.
that's right. Well, Mariska, you did a wonderful job preparing and presenting this content. Thank you so much. And thank you
Oh,
all for
yeah.
attending. Sabrina, did you have final words?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll just echo you both and say thanks so much to Mariska and Rick for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to our attendees for your questions and your comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording and where to access today's slides. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the webinar and hope to see you again soon on another session.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.